Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You know this works. You send us some interesting stuff, and we take a deep dive into it with the help of our expert.
Exactly.
And today's topic is absolutely fascinating. Reproduction. Basically how life makes more life. We got some really cool notes from a listener.
Oh yeah, these look like they're straight out of a 10th grade science class.
Yep, and get this. They cover everything from single-celled organisms to the complexities of human reproduction.
The whole shebang.
So yeah, we're gonna break it all down. Are you ready for some serious aha moments? Because trust me, the diversity of ways organisms reproduce is mind-blowing.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that just never gets old. The sheer variety is incredible.
For sure. And you know what's at the heart of it all?
Yeah.
DNA.
The blueprint of life.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like the instruction manual that guides an organism's design and how all its cells function. And you know what's fascinating?
What's that?
Passing that blueprint down to the next generation. It's crucial, but it isn't always perfect.
Ah, you're talking about variations.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like that game of telephone, right? Over time, those tiny errors in copying DNA add up. I bet that leads to some wild differences between generations.
Oh, you bet. You get everything from subtle differences to dramatic changes. It's the engine of evolution.
That's right. Some variations might be harmful, but others give organisms a huge advantage, right?
Absolutely. Think about antibiotic resistance in bacteria. One small change in their DNA can mean survival.
Wow, so variations are key to adapting and surviving in an ever-changing environment.
For sure.
Okay, so the notes mention two main ways organisms reproduce, asexually and sexually.
One parent versus two parents.
Exactly. Let's start with the solo act. Asexual reproduction. One parent creating a clone of itself.
Like amoebas splitting themselves in two. That's called fission.
Whoa, the splitting in two. Tell me more about how that actually works at a cellular level. It's crazy that something so simple can make a whole new organism.
Well, basically, the cell first copies all of its DNA and then divides its cytoplasm and cell membrane. And boom, you have two identical daughter cells.
Wow, super efficient. The notes also mention fragmentation. That's when an organism breaks into pieces, and each piece can become a whole new individual.
Like planaria.
Right, they
Yeah.
can regenerate. It's almost like a superpower.
It is pretty amazing.
Then there's budding, like those hydras that sprout mini versions of themselves.
Yeah, those are fun to watch under a microscope.
Right, and plants. They've got a whole bunch of asexual tricks up their sleeves, like spider plants sending out runners with baby plants.
That's vegetative propagation.
Right, so many different ways to reproduce without even needing seeds. Like bryophyllum,
Bryophyllum, what's special about that one?
they can grow new plants right from the notches on their leaves. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Isn't it? And don't forget about spores.
Oh, right. Organisms like Rhizopus release these tiny spores that can survive some pretty harsh conditions. They can travel far and wide, and then bam, a new Rhizopus pops up. It's really incredible how resilient they are.
It's like they're designed to spread and colonize new areas. Okay, so we've got asexual reproduction, where it's all about making clones. But then we have sexual reproduction, where things get really interesting.
That's where you get the mixing of genes from two parents.
Yeah, that creates offspring with unique combinations of traits.
Right. It's like shuffling a deck of cards. Each offspring gets a unique hand.
Love that analogy. And that genetic diversity is a game changer when it comes to survival.
Especially in environments that are constantly changing.
Okay, so we can't talk about sexual reproduction without talking about sperm and egg cells.
The stars of the show.
Exactly. They each carry half the genetic information needed to create a new individual.
And when they fuse, that's when the real magic happens.
Fertilization. That creates a zygote, a single cell, with the potential to become a whole new organism with traits from both parents.
Pretty amazing, right?
It really is. Now, the notes also talk about flowering plants.
Oh yeah, they have a whole elaborate system for sexual reproduction.
I know. They've got stamens, pistils, pollen. It's a whole different world.
It's like a botanical love story.
And speaking of love stories, let's not forget about pollination.
Oh yeah, the way pollen grains travel from one flower to another, often with the help of wind or insects.
It's like nature's matchmaking service. So, have you ever wondered how those pollen grains actually reach their destination? It's wild.
Tell me about it. Once a pollen grain lands on the stigma of a flower, it doesn't just sit there, it actually grows a tube down to the ovary, carrying the sperm cells to the egg.
Whoa, that's incredible. And you know what's even cooler? There are two types of pollination.
Self-pollination and cross-pollination.
Exactly. Cross-pollination is when pollen from one plant fertilizes the egg of another plant. And you know what that means.
Even more genetic diversity.
Exactly. More diversity, more adaptability. It's like nature's way of keeping things fresh and exciting.
For sure.
So we've covered some pretty amazing ground here, from simple organisms splitting in two to the intricate dances of flowers. But the journey doesn't stop there. We're about to get into the fascinating world of human reproduction. Don't miss it, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future deep dives.
Stay tuned. Welcome back.
All right, let's dive into the world of human reproduction. And you know what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Puberty.
Bingo! Those crazy years when our bodies start changing like crazy, hair in new places, voices cracking, growth spurts. It's like your body's doing its own thing.
It's a wild ride.
Totally. But beneath all the awkwardness, there's this incredible symphony of hormones driving it all, prepping our bodies for, well, you know.
Reproduction.
Exactly. And the notes dive into the nitty-gritty of it all. We're talking the male and female reproductive systems, with all those organs working together like a well-oiled machine.
A finely tuned machine, you could say.
Right. Each part has its own special role to play. So let's start with the basics. What are the key players in the male reproductive system?
Well, the tests are the stars of the show. They're responsible for producing sperm.
Ah, the sperm factories. And what about the female reproductive system?
The ovaries are the female counterparts to the testes. They produce the eggs.
Okay, so we've got sperm and eggs. These are the gametes, right? The cells that carry the genetic blueprints for a new human being.
Precisely. And when they meet, that's when the magic happens.
Fertilization. It's incredible to think that millions of sperm are on this epic journey to reach the egg. But only one gets to be the lucky winner.
It's a race against all odds.
Talk about high stakes. So once a sperm manages to penetrate the egg's outer layer, that's when fertilization occurs, right?
Exactly. The two sets of chromosomes combine and boom, a zygote is formed. A single cell with the potential to become a whole new person.
Mind-blowing. And then what happens?
Well, that zygote doesn't just sit around. It starts dividing and dividing, making its way down the fallopian tube toward the uterus.
It's like an epic voyage.
And if all goes well, it implants itself into the lining of the uterus. And that, my friend, is the beginning of a pregnancy.
Wow. Just thinking about all that is happening inside the body is amazing. Speaking of which, the notes also talk about menstruation.
Ah, yes, the monthly cycle.
It's something that I remember being really curious about. So basically, each month, the uterus is prepping itself for a potential pregnancy, right?
It's like laying out the welcome mat, getting everything ready for a fertilized egg.
And if there's no fertilized egg,
then the uterine lining sheds, and that's what we call menstruation.
Okay, so it's all about preparing for the possibility of new life. Fascinating. But you know, not every sexual encounter is about creating a baby.
Right, that's where reproductive health comes in.
Making informed decisions about your body and your sexual activity. The notes emphasize safe sexual practices. What are the risks if we don't prioritize safety?
Well, the biggest risks are unintended pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, or STIs.
So how can we protect ourselves? The notes mention a bunch of different contraceptive methods.
There's a whole range of options. Some act as barriers, like condoms.
Yeah, condoms seem pretty straightforward. They prevent the exchange of fluids, right?
Exactly. That's how sperm and many infections are transmitted. Condoms are effective and easy to use.
What about other methods?
Well, there are hormonal methods like the pill.
I remember learning about those. But how do they actually work?
Basically, they use synthetic hormones to prevent ovulation.
So no egg released, new pregnancy.
You got it.
Pretty clever. What other hormonal methods are there?
There are patches, rings, injections, a whole variety. It really depends on the individual's needs and preferences.
It's awesome that there are so many options.
Absolutely. And there are also IUDs, intrauterine devices.
Right, those are placed inside the uterus.
That's right. Some release hormones, and others, like the copper IUD, create a sperm-unfriendly environment.
So they prevent the sperm from reaching the egg.
Exactly. IUDs are long-lasting and very effective.
What about more permanent solutions?
You're talking about sterilization procedures, like vasectomies for men and tubal ligation for women.
Right. Are those completely foolproof?
They're highly effective, but like any medical procedure, there's a tiny chance of failure. But for the most part, they're considered permanent.
So it's a big decision.
It is. Choosing a contraceptive method is a personal decision, and it's crucial to talk to a healthcare professional to find the best option for you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, from puberty and the intricate workings of our reproductive systems to the importance of reproductive health and contraception. But our deep dive isn't over yet. And we're back. So we've gone from amoebas splitting in two to the complexities of human reproduction.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. But you know what I'm thinking about now? The future. What's next for reproduction? What's on the horizon?
It's a fascinating question and a little bit mind-boggling, to be honest.
Right. Like, what crazy advancements are scientists cooking up in their labs? I'm ready for some sci-fi stuff.
Well, get this. Genetic engineering is advancing at an incredible pace. Scientists are getting really good at manipulating genes.
So we're talking about actually editing the blueprints of life.
Wow, exactly. And you can imagine the potential, right, correcting genetic defects that cause diseases, maybe even enhancing certain traits.
It's like something straight out of a movie.
It is. But of course, with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Where do we draw the line? Who gets to decide what's a desirable trait? These are some heavy questions.
They are. It's not just about the science anymore. It's about ethics and societal values. We're talking about shaping the future of humanity.
Okay, so genetic engineering is one big thing. What else is out there?
Well, think about in vitro fertilization, IVF.
Yeah, that's been a game changer for people struggling with infertility.
It has, and it's getting more sophisticated all the time. But IVF also brings up some ethical dilemmas, like access and affordability.
Right, not everyone has equal access to these technologies.
Exactly, and then there are questions about the embryos that aren't implanted.
It's a lot to think about. It's like every advancement opens up a whole new can of worms. But that's what makes this topic so fascinating. We're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And redefining what it means to create life.
This has been an incredible deep dive. From the simplest forms of reproduction to the mind-blowing possibilities of the future.
It makes you realize just how amazing and complex life really is.
Huge thanks to our expert for guiding us through this incredible journey. And to you, dear listeners, thanks for being part of the deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep those brains buzzing.